Shalom, everybody. I'm Rabbi Edelstein, Educational Director of MEOR DC. And on behalf of Mrs. E, my wife, and Rabbi and Mrs. Nati Stern, we want to wish you a happy Passover, a joyous and uplifting Pesach, Chag Sameach. And I want to share with you, for a couple of minutes, some ideas about the holiday, which I hope will make it more meaningful and more inspirational. Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilos. We know those words and that tune. I'm not the youngest at my Seder, I can promise you, so I won't have the spotlight for the Manishtana. But the four questions. How is this night different than all other nights? And some of our commentaries explain it can also be read as a statement in Hebrew. Manishtana. How different is this night from all other nights? And it is, not just with the specific observances of the wine and the matzah and the bitter herbs, the moror and the leaning and the dipping, all of which are essential parts of the Seder. Not just with those details, but in the bigger scheme of things, what Passover night, what Seder night is all about, is utterly, completely, transcendentally different than any other night of the Jewish year. What other night takes us from our most ancient history as a people? Originally, our ancestors were idol worshippers, it says in the Haggadah, and we reference Avram Avinu's father, our first patriarch, Abraham's father, who was an idol worshipper, Terach. We go from there all the way to the Messianic future, because the second half of the Seder, if you look at it, is about the Messianic future. That's why Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi makes an appearance, because he will usher in, we're taught, the Messianic Era. What's that have to do with the Seder? Because it's, as we'll see in a second, the true completion of the Exodus will be the Messianic Era. A night from the ancient past to the distant future. It's a night really above time, where we look down at all of Jewish history, at a chain that goes all the way back to the Exodus and into the future, and each generation being a link in that chain. So we're not just seeing that chain, actually, even more than that. Every year on the Seder, we're forging that link to the next generation. And if your children are older, and they've heard the story before, you're strengthening that chain and that bond, and you're clarifying and deepening and making more luminous and beautiful the foundations of our faith, of our emunah, for ourselves, for our children, for all of those present. An incredible night above time. We're lifted above time. What is the story? And what is the process of Seder night? Me'avdus lecherus, from servitude to freedom. And of course it means physically. That's the first level. Our ancestors were being crushed by a horrible slavery, an inhumane slavery in Egypt, and we were freed on the night of the Exodus, on the 15th of Nisan, 3,300 years ago. But it's also a night of spiritual deliverance. In fact, what was the purpose of the Exodus? Just to get out of a bad situation? No, it was more than that. As God told Moshe at the beginning of the whole process, say to the children of Israel, I am Hashem, and I'll take you out from under the burdens of Egypt. I shall rescue you from their service. I'll redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I'll take you to me for a people, and I shall be a God to you. The ultimate purpose of the Exodus was to become God's people. We went from Egypt to Mount Sinai. There's a direct connection between those two events. And even nowadays, we link Passover with the next holiday, Shavuos, the reliving of getting the Torah at Mount Sinai, by a process called counting the Omer. But the point I want to share is that the purpose of the Exodus was to become a people dedicated to serving God in this world, to complete the process of becoming a covenantal people started with our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the ultimate purpose of the Exodus. That's the ultimate purpose of Seder night, which answers something that's kind of funny. The night of our freedom, of our liberation, Seder night, we have more laws, rules, and regulations than any other night of the year. How do we understand that? Because the purpose of the Exodus was to be freed from human servitude so we could enter into a relationship with God, expressed through those beautiful observances called mitzvot, commandments, which truly elevate us and give us internal spiritual freedom. And that's why the Messianic Era is referenced in the second half of the Seder, because that spiritual freedom that we lived through, that through the Exodus, and that spiritual freedom that the Torah gives to the world to lift us up above the physical limitations of just being physical creatures, because the Torah connects us to the eternal, to God. That process of spiritual freedom and elevation and liberation won't be completed for us or for the rest of mankind until the Messianic era. An incredible night. From servitude to freedom, from the past to the future, we're above time. We're forging a link in the miraculous story of our people, and it is miraculous. And in fact, the Exodus it commemorates one of the greatest miracle in human history. A Jewish people, a slave people coming out to freedom with signs and wonders that have inspired mankind and formed the foundation of Western religion. And we're reliving it every single year. And tomorrow night is coming, quickly approaching. Have a wonderful, wonderful Pesach, an uplifting, beautiful, inspirational time with family, with children, with oneself. Looking inward, looking down, looking up. It's a night above time, unlike any other night of the year. Manish Tana, Halayla Hazeh. Chag Sameach. Be in touch, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Elevated, liberated, spiritually free. This year in exile, next year in Jerusalem. This year slaves. Next year may we be free people. Chag Sameach.